Hi guys, welcome. Today we're talking about efficiency, profits, and creative destruction from the quarantine. Here you go, take it from here.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the enthusiasm. All right, so we're talking about efficiency, profits, Schumpeter, and creative destruction. They're all tied together. And here's the deal. The issue of economic efficiency. You know, economics is about dealing with scarce resources and economizing. The economizing problem is how to do the best you can with the limited scarce resources that you have available. And it applies to individuals, families, companies, schools, nonprofits, governments. Everybody has the scarcity issue to deal with. And if you're efficient about it, you live better. And if you do a terrible job, like North Korea, where they take their scarce resources and build giant monuments, and the cream of the cream live in grotesque luxury while the people are starving, and they build a giant military to scare Japan and so forth. That is the opposite of efficiency. So anyway, efficiency is a crucial matter. Any company that's more efficient will tend to survive. Not so efficient tends to not. Any species of animals, I mean, the little teeny ants, apparently, the little black ants wiped out the bigger red ants because they're more efficient for some reason. Anyway, efficiency is a giant matter. And when I was in undergraduate, we studied the issue of economic efficiency, and we compared purely competitive industries with monopolies. And what we found was that purely competitive industries were productively efficient. That is, they were able to use the least amount of resources necessary to produce a good. And by using the least amount of resources necessary, it saved resources that could have or would have been wasted, so that those other resources can be used to produce other things that people need and want. So that's productive efficiency, and it will take, in a pure competition, if this is the firms, any firm in pure competition's short-run average cost curve, production takes place right there at that minimum point. You have to use this many resources to produce this item, say $10 worth of resources, and that is the minimum amount of resources that can be used to produce and still produce this item. If this firm were using this many resources to produce it for some reason, and it was taking $15 worth of resources to produce each one of these items, this is quantity produced, then it means that there would be $5 worth of resources being used unnecessarily, which means that this $5 worth of resources could have been used to produce other things. So there's an opportunity cost to being inefficient, productively inefficient. So in pure competition, that's what happens. It's productively efficient, and it's also allocatively efficient. We have scarce resources, and we have to put these resources in exactly the different areas where they're going to do the most good. And so, are we productively efficient in pure competition if this is the supply for the industry in pure competition, and this is the demand for the park bench industry? How do we know when we have provided exactly the right amount of resources into the park bench industry to maximize the well-being? And the answer is, in pure competition, that's the quantity that's going to be produced, and that's the price that's going to be charged. And this area of consumer surplus and producer surplus is maximized. And further, there is no deadweight loss, which means Q1 is exactly the quantity to produce to maximize the wealth of the society in the production of park benches, and any additional resources can go someplace else and do some good producing something else. Monopolies, on the other hand, are they allocatively efficient? No. If this is a monopoly, this is something like the supply curve, the marginal cost curve, and that's the demand curve. But with a monopoly, we don't really care about what the demand curve is. We care about marginal revenue. And we would produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, which is this quantity, and then the price that the monopolist charges would be P sub M here. And we can see this is the area of consumer surplus, producer surplus, opportunity cost, and there is good old deadweight loss, which means lost wealth. People are worse off because Q sub M is being produced instead of what would be this quantity where supply and demand meet, QO for optimal. So purely competitive industries compared to monopolies are productively efficient and allocatively efficient, and that's why it was a slam dunk. Pure competition is good, monopoly is bad. The Justice Department should be vigorous in reducing the amount of monopoly power in markets and try and make them as competitive as possible. But these are static evaluations. Static means with time stopped. So, as opposed to dynamic. Dynamic means with time included. Well, in real life, there's time. And so the difference between a static picture would be a snapshot, and a dynamic picture would be a video. And it was Joseph Schumpeter who made the observation that there's a third type of efficiency that this does not include and may cause people to rethink the issue. So, the third type is dynamic efficiency, and dynamic efficiency means maximizing economic growth over time. The maximum economic growth over time. So the production possibilities frontier of a country shifting outward, that's economic growth. And what causes economic growth? An increase in the quantity or quality of resources, an improvement in technology, and an improvement in rules of the game. So this Schumpeter analysis of dynamic efficiency includes the role of entrepreneurs in the economy. It makes those explicitly and points out that in some economies, entrepreneurs are rewarded. And by rewarded, it means entrepreneurs take risks trying to develop new products, new ways of doing things, new organizations for things that didn't exist before, that make things better. And in the process of doing this, entrepreneurs suffer losses. Most entrepreneurial activity is greeted with losses, not success and profits. But the profits are the incentives for entrepreneurs to take the risks and try and build a better mousetrap, try and find a new, a new pill that will help with some medical problem. And they do it because profits are the incentives. If they lose, they lose. But if they win, they can get very wealthy. And that's lovely. That's enough to keep them going. And so it turns out that the fundamental fact of a market system is this incredible dynamic process where constantly things are being improved, things are getting cheaper, things are getting more available. It was Schumpeter who pointed out in the old days, the old days, that silk stockings, nylons, were for the richest of the rich. They were so scarce, and the resources that were used to produce them were so scarce that only the most wealthy could have silk stockings on their legs. But eventually, nylon was developed, and they figured out how to make synthetic silk and how to weave it. And all of a sudden, the equivalent of silk stockings were available to everyone when it had only been available to royalty and the rich before. And this process of dynamic change is one of the fundamental characteristics of a market system where entrepreneurs are rewarded. How do you punish entrepreneurs? You punish entrepreneurs by putting all sorts of roadblocks in their way and also by taxing away the profits. If you do that, you kill entrepreneurship in an economy and you kill that dynamic as well. So Schumpeter pointed out the role of profits, and that economic profits, monopoly profits, are the ones, not those normal profits that you get in pure competition, except for very short periods of time when something has happened and everything else needs to adjust to it. So it turns out that this entrepreneurial activity creates entire new ways of doing things, entire new industries that destroy old industries and replace them with something better. And in the process, cause this economic growth and improvements in well-being. And points out that when it comes to a monopoly or any firm, the most important competition is not the competition from other firms that produce the same thing and sell in the same markets. No, no, no. The most important competition comes from processes and things that do not currently exist, but will at some point be invented. So there are just hundreds of examples of this. A very simple one was that the original microwave ovens were called radar ranges, a Manna radar range. And somebody figured out that you could take radar, contain it, and use it to heat up food. And in the process disrupted the food preparation industry tremendously. There used to be a company that was all over the place called Tower Records. And Tower Records doesn't exist anymore, but for quite a long time, Tower Records didn't have any records in them. And the question was, how did Tower Records, what happened to records? The vinyl discs, in case you don't know, where the needle, they spin around, the needle makes sounds. The vinyl discs were beaten up by the 8-track tape, and then by the mini tapes, and then by CDs. And all of those were destroyed creatively as well and replaced with digital stuff. And digital stuff came from the fact that a bunch of scientists wanted to connect their labs together and pass information to each other. But the tiny little wires they used, phone wires, mostly, couldn't carry much information. It was too slow, so they worked very hard to find compression techniques that would make it more possible for them to send larger bits of data through these little wires. And so that happened, but it turns out that they could compress music as well. And so then we got MP3s and all the digitized music that we have now that can travel over the airwaves, and it is pretty much putting to death CDs as well now. And this is all a process of creative destruction. All of the taxi monopolies that were in every city in every part of the world, where these taxi monopolies had cooked up some scheme with the local governments that they are the exclusive taxi producers. In New York City, to drive a taxi, you had to have a medallion, and the medallion cost $500,000. And the taxi drivers had this little monopoly deal cooked up where they had eliminated a good bit of their competition. And such a wonderful monopoly as this was not destroyed by other taxi drivers. It was destroyed by, whatever that thing is, Uber, where they used all of these technologies that were basically phone technologies and GPS, and figured out a way to just blow the taxi industry out of the water with some, what I think is phenomenal competition. In any case, you can't understand the dynamic aspects of an economic system without understanding Joe Schumpeter. He was the Austrian finance minister. He claimed that he had 3 goals in life, and he had accomplished 2 of them, but he didn't specify which ones. His first goal was to be the world's best economist. The second was to be the world's best polo player, that's horsey pony polo, and to be the world's greatest lover, and that he had accomplished 2 of those 3. I don't know if that, nobody knows. Anyway, that's Schumpeter, dynamic efficiency, the role of entrepreneurs, that's creative destruction. You can see it everywhere. It's really something.